if you went to college, gave up 4 years of your life, and incurred hundreds of thousands of dollars in tuition, debt, and forgot earnings, you'd be set for life with a cushy job and handsome salary. Unfortunately, that is no longer the case. In the US, about 70% of high school graduates are going to college. A college degree is becoming essentially the new high school diploma. Richard Arum, a sociologist at NYU, did a report early this year called Academically Adrift, and they found that 36% of college students, over 4 years of college, showed no improvement in critical thinking, complex reasoning, or writing. The problem is that in addition to the declining quality of college, college is too often promoting competition, conformity, and theory, rather than things like creativity, innovation, and application, that are what we need to inspire in students if we want people to forge their own paths. If college were teaching the skills requisite for success, 22.4% of college graduates under 25, the class of students which you would think would have had the benefit of the most recent innovations in technological advances, wouldn't be unemployed. And another 22% wouldn't be working in jobs that don't require a college degree. The average student graduates with $34,000 in debt, we're stuck in a very narrow track, forced to find a job to pay off that debt after college, instead of being able to do our own thing, follow our passions. We're essentially mortgaging away our freedom to innovate in exchange for a degree. Since 1980, the cost of college has risen more than 400%, adjusted for inflation, far above anything else. And while I'm not suggesting that doctors shouldn't go to school, I don't recommend keeping cadavers in your garage, I do think that if you're pursuing a non-licensed profession, you should think about the investment that you're making in your future. Essentially, we've stripped away all value from higher education. And I'm the young, innocent kid who's had the audacity to stand up and point out that the university has no clothes. We're facing a bubble that's going to be as bad, if not worse, than the housing bubble. Because in the US, student loans are unforgivable in the case of bankruptcy. The bank can repossess your house, but they really can't repossess your degree. We may think that higher education lives in a glass castle of BA, but it really lives in an ivory tower of BS. And when that ivory tower shatters, education's never going to be the same. The problems that I've outlined with college reflect a cultural shift from college being a vehicle to gain knowledge to a rite of passage to adulthood. We aren't going to college because we know exactly what we want to do with our lives. We're going to college because our peers are going, or our parents went, or society expects it. And when we 19-year-olds, or 18-year-olds, or 21-year-olds embolden ourselves in this way, we become consumers. We expect certain things from college. We're more interested in the degree, the credential, the end result, rather than the intellectual journey that leads there. And colleges start spending more money on lavish student residences and nice gymnasiums than investments in professors and other academic institutions that would further the educational experience. I left college 2 months ago because the opportunity cost of going to class was too high. There were too many phone calls to make, too many places to be, and too many lines of code to write. But for me, leaving college was not a big deal. I also left school in 5th grade. At the end of 5th grade, I told my parents that I really hadn't learned anything, and that I wanted to learn outside of the classroom. Something had to be done if I were to continue to learn. And so I became an unschooler, the self-directed form of homeschooler. I sought out mentors. I worked in startups. I helped build a library. I found mentors. I took college classes. I organized collaborative learning groups with my peers, and essentially hacked my education. In an environment where I had to go find the resources in the world and put them together in a cohesive educational program, I gained the skills that I wouldn't have never been able to access had education just been prescribed to me. Now imagine for a moment if the millions of 18 to 22-year-olds who are currently sitting in class, copying their professor's words verbatim off the blackboard, instead went out and started doing and creating and ideating in the real world. Imagine if they started their own projects, their own companies, their own initiatives. Imagine if we went back to learning as practiced in French salons, where young people gathered to support, challenge, and question each other in building a better world. My goal isn't to take down the academy, but I believe that the world has enough universities. We can do better. We can unleash the power of youth to change the world. Yet, as Malcolm Gladwell showed in Outliers, beyond a basic level of intellectual capabilities, increased grades or IQ scores don't actually correlate to success. What matters more is your passion, your initiative, your motivation, your ability to navigate the world emotionally. Yet those abilities aren't gained from sitting in a classroom and sharpening your number 2 pencil. You gain those at the College of Hard Knocks that real-world experience offers. Part of the problem is that we think that there are only 3 paths in life. A, go to college, get a degree and a middle-class job. B, become the next Mark Zuckerberg. Or C, relegate yourself to a life of asking, would you like fries with that? Welcome to door number 4. You can be a productive member of society and contribute to the economy without necessarily achieving world domination. People like to dismiss me and tell me that I'm the 1%, that I should have stayed in college because I'm not Mark Zuckerberg. But the fact is that I'm not special. I did not start out with any special connections. My parents aren't rich. I didn't go to college when I was 12. The only thing that sets me apart from anybody else is that I learned early to live by the words of Mark Twain and never let my schooling interfere with my education. Some like to argue that instead of changing the world, we college dropouts will sit in our parents' basement, playing video games, smoking pot, and doing Jell-O shots. I think that's a valid but irrelevant concern, because the people who are going to choose video games over the human condition are going to do so before, during, and after college. We, the youth who take our education beyond the classroom, understand how our actions directly help build a better world. We will change the world irrespective of the letters after our names. The next time you're sitting in class, staring blankly at prefabricated PowerPoint slides, much as you're doing right now, I challenge you to consider the opportunity cost of what you're engaging in. How else could that time and money be used? How many companies could you start? How many countries could you visit? How many lives could you improve? I'm happy to take questions about the Teal Fellowship, about my background as an unschooler, about what I'm doing now with Uncollege, or about what I see as the future of higher education if people are interested in that discussion. Yes?
I'm curious as to how you fund all this stuff, because when you say take a year off and travel and that kind of stuff, I don't see where the money comes from.
The question is how one would go about funding an uncollege journey. And for me personally, I received funding from Peter Thiel. I also just sold a book deal to Penguin. Penguin will be publishing my book next year, which will be a practical guide to gaining the skills requisite for success in the real world, the initiative, the passion, the motivation, the hustle, but the skills that aren't taught in class. Yes? I think there's a question of trust in yourself, which I would call self-confidence, but also a question of trust in authority. And while I have a very high level of self-confidence, I have a very low level of trust in authorities. I'm always willing to question authority, whether it's my parents, whether it's an educational institution, whether it's a boss at a job. And I think that to be successful at forging your own path, you have to not care about the validation of others. You have to be self-assured and know that what you're doing is the right thing, and not care about what your friends think, or what your peers think, or what your parents think about what you're doing. And I think that's something that I developed very early because I was learning outside of an institution and had to be confident enough in my ability to choose what I was learning as a valid source of information. That it was inherent in that educational process that I developed a very high level of trust in myself and very low level of trust in institutions.
I've seen you trust. The reason I asked about trust is that in the traditional schooling structure, there's not a lot of trust that students will not cheat, not do the right work, and you seem more empowered as a person who trusts things, even if you question them.
And I think it's a question of not just trusting students, but oh, the question is, what is your relationship with trust? And I think that in many ways, the trust that is given to students in a traditional school setting is trust in them to complete their homework assignments on time, for example. And what's required is a trust that students are able to pursue and function and learn on their own. I come into contact with many people who think that my ideas are pretty out there. And the main difference of opinion that we come down to is that I believe that everybody is innately curious, and if given the opportunity, they will find something to learn about. There are many people who are afraid that without schools, everybody will become illiterate. And they don't trust that individuals are innately curious. Thank you. Any other questions? Here we go.
What is uncollege?
The question is, what is uncollege? And uncollege is a macro-level social movement that I lead, challenging the notion that college equals success. And right now, that involves a lot of speaking and talking and writing about the issue at hand. But as the movement progresses, we're going to be building tools and resources to help independent learners find ways to succeed outside the classroom. But we're also working with existing institutions to design student experiences that build those sorts of emotional skills that I've mentioned into the university experience.
So were these primarily intellectual education, or could it be vocational, like blue collar?
Absolutely. Uncollege is much more of a learning philosophy than any sort of institutionalized program.
Yes, your educational description is totally outside the usual, the norm. What about your social world? Do you find yourself in a comfortable circle, or do you find yourself also looking for where to fit?
Many people assume that homeschooling meant sitting in my bedroom, in my pajamas, watching MIT OpenCourseWare, and that was not the case at all. I was going out and engaging in learning experiences with social groups of my peers, as well as other individuals that I found through volunteering groups and through college classes and through internships that together formed a cohesive educational program. Students from the college that I attended, a small school in Arkansas called Hendrix for 8 months, have continually asked me, don't you miss dorm life? And the answer is no, absolutely not. Because instead of being confined to a group where the expectation is that you'll socialize with individuals with whom you're haphazardly matched, I now have the freedom to choose who I associate with. I'm able to go out and engage with different circles of friends, whether those be transhumanist friends or neuroscience friends or entrepreneur friends. Groups that I wasn't able to access when I was confined to a dorm room.